Great. Oops, well, did I just turn off my mic? Oh, it's back on. Okay, so good afternoon and great to be with everybody. It's been an exciting time in the life of the faith and the life of the church. It's been a nonstop month here since the death of Pope Francis and the installation of Pope Leo shortly, not very long ago. The news media is fascinated by him, was fascinated by Pope Francis's death, and amazing the thousands and millions across the world that tuned in to follow these different events in the ancient city of Rome. So it's with that in mind, I want to spend a little bit of time sharing some thoughts, and then please don't hesitate to embellish or add or ask any questions that you might have. First of all, I think we're just coming up on the 10th anniversary of Laudato Si. And I know many of you are part of the Laudato Si action platform, where we've been adding to the list of things that each congregation or individuals have taken up to implement Laudato Si, to share the message of Laudato Si, and to be continuing to bring forward the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, as Pope Francis begins that encyclical with. So it's I suppose the first point to make, I think, is in some ways, even though they describe Pope Leo as an American Pope, this is the second Pope from Latin America, I think, in the sense that Pope Francis coming from Argentina, way down in the tippy southern corner there, and Pope Leo having spent a good number of years in Peru. So that's the two I suppose the two links of the two extremes of Latin America, but with very different histories. We know the history of Peru goes way back to the conquistadors and to the many ways in which the Portuguese and Spanish influenced the organization of the church. For any of you who've had the opportunity to go to Peru, I'm sure you were blinded by all the gold in all those churches, from Lima down and up. So that's very different from the origins of Argentina. We know that much of Argentina, while it has a long history of its own, much of it was influenced also at the end of the Second World War, when there was a great migration of Europeans to Argentina. And we know that Francis, his parents came originally from Italy, so that was a European connection. And with Pope Leo, his parents are obviously from the United States. But then there's been this very, very interesting set of articles, I'm sure you've seen some of them, about his Creole heritage. We always noticed that Creole was the language of Haiti, and we have an Oblate brother living with us here in Washington at the moment, so I get to hear a lot of Creole as he's walking up and down the hallway talking on his phone. But it's been interesting to see that uncovered and to see that very much how it's connected. And some of you know a lot more about this than I do, that the Creole migration was very much connected with the southeastern side of the United States, right? We know with Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana, New Orleans, very much mixing in with the peoples of the Caribbean, and so it's never would I think have noticed that until, and this is an odd feature in some ways that I really liked. He wasn't. We weren't he wasn't named Pope very long when all of a sudden you saw these individuals who love doing research and who have researched much of the history of the Caribbean and of that section of the United States, and then dug into his history itself and how his parents got from, I believe it was from Louisiana up to Chicago area. But you get a hobby or whatever as each of us do, and we poke around. And of course, the internet now has made that so much easier. But celebrating his Creole background, even though his brothers and the family, obviously, they said they never spent much time talking about that side of the family, as if it was not an important feature for them. But enough about that. It's clear in some ways, I think, secondly, one of the most important things is that in many ways, it almost seems like Pope Francis prepared the runway or the path for his successor. If you look at, we know that Leo, Robert Francis Prevost, is an Augustinian. And the Augustinian province in Chicago, one of the big efforts right around 1960, particularly with Pope John the 23rd, was to get missionaries from the United States to accept responsibility for some of the areas and the countries of Latin America. Prior to that, they had been mostly influenced by the Spanish and the Portuguese, going all the way back to the conquistadors. So if you touch into the history of any religious congregation, the Augustinians took responsibility for northern Peru. My own congregation, the Oblates, because we were a number of provinces at that time, the Oblates along the east coast of the United States opened some missions in Sao Paulo in Brazil. The Oblates from Minnesota and Wisconsin and those areas opened a mission in Recife, which was the home of the famous Dom Helder Camara. The Oblates in Ireland took responsibility for a mission in Goiânia in Brazil, which is not terribly far from Brasilia. So, and many of the congregations have similar stories and similar histories. So that's how the Augustinians ended up there. I had a good friend, a Sister of Charity of Halifax in Nova Scotia, and her congregation accepted a mission in Chiclayo, in Peru. So you see this amazing flow back and forth, starting in the 50s and the 60s, between the United States and different areas of Latin America, which explains, on the one hand, Pope Francis's parents came from Italy much longer time ago, but Pope Leo, much more in the, he was born in 1955, so I think that makes me 6 years older than he is, if you're calculating. But it's a very interesting history and an interesting story. So opens up a number of questions, that are obviously everybody is discussing these days and trying to unearth, some of the real nuggets that they want about his life. How Father Bob became. New York Times had a great article how Father Bob became Pope Leo, but his story is fascinating. His story is just of coming from Chicago as a missionary. There's plenty of photos out there. He's got his Wellingtons on, walking around in the mud and in the water. He's known to have loved driving from Chiclayo, which is where he was in northern Peru, all the way to Lima. That's about a 10-hour ride, if you're counting, on mostly dusty roads. So apparently that didn't deter him at all from being out there and on the road and moving around. So we'll have to have chance to explore some of that going forward. Pope Francis spoke often about capitalism and socialism, and spoke about the fact that the economic system that we have, while it had done in some ways great things, and he wanted to recognize that, had also left an awful lot of people behind and made some people very rich and burdened lots of folks with poverty and hunger, and also a loss of their land, loss of their heritage. So he was very much, I suppose you would say, very much taken up with the bigger picture and conversation, because so many of the Catholic social teaching encyclicals of the 20th century were about socialism, capitalism, and picked up in different ways. Michael Novak wrote a book, The Spirit of Democratic Capitalism, which he wanted to elevate very much, that democracy and capitalism belong together and were the future. Pope Francis, on the other hand, simply said that the system had done great damage to the earth, and we needed to spend a whole lot of time helping the earth to recover, helping the environment to be safe, helping to guarantee that the environment, whatever little plot of it that we inhabit, is going to survive us and be available to future generations. And if you remember, also another sidebar for Pope Francis was indigenous people. He had the Synod on the Amazon. He had brought lots of folks from the Amazon to Rome, lots of indigenous folks, and pointed out the richness of their culture, but also the reverence with which they held the earth. And so that was a constant theme of his papacy. It's going to be interesting to see where Pope Leo goes with this. It's way too early to tell what he's picking up with and what he's going along with. The media is fascinated by where he visits, where he goes for mass, where he goes for lunch, his little trips around Rome. Did he wear a different outfit than the Pope? Is he driving the same car? Is he going to live in the palace? Nothing to worry about for now, in my estimation. All of that will become clear. Oh yeah, a little sidebar that I should mention. When he went to Rome, when he was asked to go to Rome a couple of years ago by Pope Francis to be the prefect for the dicastery that makes bishops, he ended up living in an apartment of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Not an organization that's beloved by many, but that's when after he was elected, he walked back there and stayed the night there. And one of my good friends, some of you know Sister Laurence. Remember Laurence, Susan and Anna? Well, Laurence is a member of this newly found congregation. I think it was around 1920. They're a women's congregation from Aix-en-Provence in France, but very much they each have professional careers, and they're members of religious orders. So I know some of them who are engineers. Laurence, when I first met her, was a stockbroker. So they have a variety of careers, but they live in community and follow I forget, I'm terrible at the name of the congregation, but also Laurence is now the superior general of her congregation. It's a very small congregation, but what is the sister's name? She was the undersecretary for the Synod. I forget her name. It'll come to me in a minute. Anyway, she was also living down the hall from the Pope when he moved into Rome. So Laurence, if I didn't sent a picture the day after he was elected, a selfie with the Pope in the apartment, because she was staying with her friend, and the Pope came back and says, I'm staying here tonight. So it had some same ways in which, if you remember, Pope Francis said, I'm not living in the palace. I'm going back to Santa Marta, because he liked to be around people. So all of those things we'll see, I think, in time, what that means or what message is being sent. And of course, they're all being analyzed and dissected, and having articles written about that. It's hard to tell. We've had in the ICCR world, or the socially responsible investing world, or the stockholder filing resolutions, the Dominicans have two colleges in the United States. I mean, not Dominicans, the Augustinians. They have one which we all know probably of, is Villanova in Philadelphia, which always has great basketball teams. They have another small college that they started up near Lowell, Massachusetts, called Merrimack College. That was founded in 1949. So it's as old as I am. Anyway, that was not, but I was also did a little poking around and found that the Augustinians in the Philadelphia area were active with PACRI. So PACRI was started out as a CRI, like the CRI in San Antonio and like the many other socially responsible corporate responsibility groups founded by religious. In Philadelphia, it was called PACRI, the Philadelphia Area Corporate Social Response, CRI. Anyway, Nora Nash and Tom McCaney and all those folks that you know. So at that time, the Augustinians and Villanova were active in that CRI. So we were trying to trace around what might be some connections that we could reach out to Pope Leo with in relationship to the kind of work that we've been doing for so many years. So we're still digging on this and still trying to get some more connections. I heard back from Nora Nash, who many of you know, heard back from Tom McCaney, who many of you also know, and who guides a number of our dialogues with corporations. So that'll be an interesting avenue to explore. Let me catch my breath. Any comments from anybody so far? You've been reading a lot as well, because I know there's a bunch of readers on this screen.
I just appreciate both the South American frame that you've given us, and now this, the possibility that there may be some connections, at least with the congregation. But I'm wondering, and I guess going back to the Augustinian European roots, ancient, what else do you think? And this is always just speculation that will, because of the formation of Pope Leo as an Augustinian, will impact, I'm thinking of some of the social issues, but there may be others, or just kind of to see what he's about in a general sort of way that might be, it's all speculation. Just, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I most of the stuff that I've read is to say that he sees himself very much in continuity with Pope Francis. And I think he demonstrates that a couple of ways. First of all, it's clear to me that Francis had a great hand in making him Pope. He appointed him after he was Superior General of the Augustinians to be the bishop in Chiclayo. Then he elevated him to be an archbishop. Then he made him a cardinal and invited him to Rome to head the dicastery for bishop making around the world. And he's been doing that for a couple of years. So there's a whole lot of continuity. He talks in very much the same terms, although not as strongly as Pope Francis, because I think many of the articles I've seen see him as a maybe a quieter presence than Pope Francis. But he also seems to emphasize, because he was present at the synod, and that synodality is something that he talks about. Now we'll have to. The sister's name I was trying to remember was Sister Natalie Burkhardt. She's the undersecretary for the dicastery on the synod, and you'll see her. She's got, little more hair than you do, Anna, but the same kind of frizzy style. She's French, speaks beautiful French, but anyway, there's a great link between the two of them. So I suspect what you're going to see coming from Leo is the emphasis on synodality. Curious enough, I mean, I was blown away when they came out in the beginning and announced that he had chosen the name Leo, because any of you who have studied Catholic social teaching over the years know that how central to contemporary Catholic social teaching is Pope Leo XIII was. He was Pope for a long time. They said he was afraid to leave the Vatican because the Italians wouldn't let him back in. That's one story that's out there. But Leo XIII was famous for having written that encyclical. We always knew it as in Latin rerum novarum, of new things. But it was his effort to look at the world around and to say, this world is not working for an awful lot of people, especially for workers. They're abused in the factories they work in. They're not paid enough. They're working in terrible conditions. They're not given enough time off for vacation, for rest, for taking care of their families. And so interesting that he chose Leo XIV. And the speculation being, I suppose, that means he may pay more attention to the whole question of gig workers, of those who are particularly concerned about what's the impact of artificial intelligence on workers, on jobs, on people who are going to be replaced by machines. And we know that Pope Francis talked about that quite a bit, but he seems to give some indication, Leo does, that the church, he wants to invite the church into the midst of the conversation about artificial intelligence. Pope Francis did some of that, and he had some good advisors in Rome. But I spent the last 2 days trying to sort out a chat GBT here and trying to just talking to my computer and saying, I'd like to put together a PowerPoint on socially responsible investing. Could you help me? And I haven't made much progress. Now, if anybody on here has made progress on asking your chat GBT questions like that, please let me know. Because, we're all, I don't know, the stuff that I read is saying, well, professors at universities are always concerned about when their students are handing in papers, did they actually write the paper themselves, or did they get help from a chat GBT, or was it artificial intelligence? So it's a whole new ballgame. I've shut it down for the weekend. Actually, we're in the middle of the week now, but I still have got to get back to it. But if you come up with any secret approaches on this, please let me know, because anything that gets my fingers, these ones, off of a keyboard, I'm in favor of. I've learned the benefits of dictation, and I've learned the benefits of being able to transcribe things, but I want AI and chat GBTs to be doing a bit more work for me. Susan, you're shaking your head.
Good luck. Just good luck.
There's got to be some Benedictine scholars that are into this.
No, not that I know of so far. So.
Well, keep looking, because I know they're out there. They may be in there. They may only be teenagers or in their 20s now, so we don't have much connection with them. But I think it's really important that we be able to connect with that. Anyway, so Leo XIV, we'll have to wait and see. There's a interesting conversation that he had with J.D. Vance, who was there at his installation. There's a podcast out there. It'll be whether or not it's unclear to me. He hasn't really been in the United States for a long time. Between his time in Peru, his time in Rome at the Augustinian headquarters as the prior general, his time as prefect for making bishops. So it'll be interesting to see. And of course, we know more about his family than we did about Pope Francis's family, right? Because he's got a couple of brothers there in Chicago, one who's one who's reported to be a big MAGA fan and a big fan of Donald Trump's. And so we'll have to see whether there are any sibling debates or any sibling arguments about what that's looking like. So I think we've got lots of things to explore. Is my message in certain sense. You know, anybody got any experience in Peru? Are your congregations? So in the work we were doing with mining, and you've heard me talk about this, we've been to Peru many times. And Peru, because of its what is the Andes and the Cordillera, has always had a great presence of mining companies, whether it's with Rio Tinto, whether it's with Anglo-American, whether it's with Freeport. And lots of gold mining. That's why they had all that gold that they could put in the churches in Peru. So it'll be interesting to see. One of the things that we ran into in our work with mining companies quite often was, you know, they would open a mine, and we have been to mine sites in Cajamarca and in Yanacocha and up northern as well, although I haven't seen much from Pope Leo on mining. But mining is a really important ingredient in Peru and essential. But one of the ways that mining companies, I think, made some of their entrees with local communities is that they would invite the local bishop to be on their advisory council. So on a couple of our visits to mine sites in Peru, we also got to meet with the local bishop, not with Bishop Roberto, but also in Cajamarca when we were there. And then there are some obviously terrible stories about taking the land of local communities and not compensating them for it, not being careful about the chemicals that they were using in extracting minerals, and then also in whatever it is, processing, you know, the gold that you dig out of the ground or the copper or whatever it is. All of that is done by using different chemicals. And that ended up polluting many of the rivers in Peru. There are, do you remember, Susan or Anna, remember, what was the famous one that Cardinal Barreto was involved in? But it's a famous mine site where the pollution and the amount of lead that was put into the water system just absolutely devastated local communities and particularly children. Yep. So it'll be interesting to see what how the Pope Leo picks this up. Mining, yep. He's got some direct experience. Peru has much more mining than Argentina, as far as I know, and so yeah. I'm sure it must have been a part of his must have been a part of his experience.
Were that area that he was in, or he spent most of his time in relation to mines? I don't
Not
know.
a lot of mines in was in Chiclayo, and then the other diocese, another Augustinian from Chicago, his name, it was in Chulacanas. It was what was his last name? I forget, because I met him. Big tall guy, Turley. Bishop Turley was from Chicago as well. So it was kind of the area. I'm not familiar. I haven't had time to look up to see if there were any mines in either Chiclayo or Chulacanas. The mines that I'm familiar with were a bit further south along the coast in Cajamarca and Yanacocha and places like that.
I understand, you know, the Incarnate Word sister have a big ministry there for many years in Peru.
I think you're right, Esther.
Yeah, it's lots of them, yeah. And then now they're mainly is for education in Peru. But used to be, you know, they have a ministry at Chimbodi for healthcare. So I visited them before, but I've never heard about it. But I haven't heard from many sisters because they all are retired at the San Antonio, you know, community. So I haven't had a chance to talk with them yet. And too bad, you know, Sister Lady is not here because she